Hi everybody, I'm Megan and I'm one of the Lamazi brand supporters. I'm here today to talk to you all about working with jersey rib knit, such as the one I am wearing today. The cardigan I am wearing is the True Bias Brynn pattern, and you may or may not have got this as part of the November Luxury Lamazi Makers Club kit. Whether or not you got that kit, the same principles apply to whenever you're working with stretchy fabric. The True Bias Brynn cardigan is this one here. It's a top, a dress, long sleeve, short sleeve. It's quite a lot of variations in this, and I made it in this beautiful leopard print narrow rib knit. This is, I believe, 100% cotton. It's got a good amount of stretch and recovery to it. So the first thing, talking of stretch and recovery, that I'm going to talk to you about is making sure you have the right stretch percentage for your project. So the cardigan that I'm wearing requests in the pattern for a minimum of 60% stretch, which is what this one does have. Patterns such as this are designed with negative ease, which means they're very close fitting. So if you choose a fabric that doesn't have enough stretch, it's going to be too tight for you. You won't have enough room to move, you won't feel like you can breathe or eat in it. So always make sure that your fabric has the right amount of stretch. Even sometimes if it says 60%, check it yourself because it varies wildly. I've got a few examples here of different rib knits that I've sewn with. They all have a very high stretch percentage, but they all behave quite differently. So this one's got quite a wide flat rib knit. It's quite a heavy jersey and it's got really good recovery. This is another one that has a wide rib knit, also has good stretch, but the recovery isn't quite as good, therefore it's much wider and looser fitting. And then I've got a narrow rib knit here, which has got a really good amount of stretch and amazing recovery. This one is very close fitting, this one is looser fitting. So always have a play with your fabric, test on your machine, see if you think it's going to be right for your pattern. This one, the True Bias one, does have a chart inside to show you how to check the stretch percentage, and you can use that to sort of pull your fabric and see how well it recovers. So I would recommend you use those guides to make sure, because otherwise you're going to have a garment at the end that maybe won't fit you. So when you are washing your fabric, just wash as normal. I do it on a 30-degree wash, but the main thing to remember is to keep it flat when you take it out the machine. Dry flat on an airer and try not to let it hang over the edges, whether that's when you're sewing or when you're drying. You don't want it hanging over the edge of your desk when you're sewing either, because if it does, the weight of the fabric stretches it and could mean that you end up with your garment all wonky and all out of shape, and you don't want that after all the effort you've put into sewing it. When it comes to sewing, I would highly recommend that you use a stretch needle. I've got a few in my little box here. You can get jersey, you can get ballpoint, or you can get stretch. They basically all do the same. They prevent snagging and they work much better when you're using a knit fabric. So always make sure you've got the right needle for your project in your machine, jersey or stretch needles. And that will make sure your fabric doesn't end up with little runs going down it as well. When it comes to sewing your fabric, you've got a few options. The easiest one, and the one I tend to go for because I'm a bit of a lazy sewer, is my overlocker. And you can do most seams straight on your overlocker. If you don't have an overlocker or don't feel confident in using one to do your whole garment, you have a wealth of options depending on the machine that you have. So you can use a zigzag stitch, you can use a lightning bolt stitch, you can use a triple straight stretch stitch, or you can use something like Maraflex. Maraflex is a stretchy elasticated thread, and it means that you can you see that? It means that you can use a straight stitch when you're working with stretch fabric. Some people find they do need to change their settings when they're working with Maraflex. My machine doesn't. You use it in your bobbin and your top thread, just as you would with normal thread. So you don't need to do anything different in terms of winding your bobbin. Yeah, so you may find you need to lengthen the stitch a little bit. I don't, but when I'm hemming, I do generally with all thread just go to about a 2.8 or a 3mm stitch just to make it a little bit neater. So if you haven't used Maraflex before, give it a go. It can be a real game changer, and it means you don't need to mess around finding the perfect width and everything for your zigzag stitches. You don't have to finish the seams on jersey fabric because it doesn't fray. But again, if you want to, you can use an overcast fit on your machine or just zigzag the edges or leave it completely raw. It's entirely up to you. Mine are all overlocked, but yeah. In general, I found this rib knit really easy to work with. It wasn't too challenging at all. And I think you'll find as long as you've got, like I said, the right needle, the right thread and everything, it shouldn't be too challenging. If you're using a stripy fabric, you might want to use a walking foot to stop the fabric from feeding through at different rates, and that will help you to keep your lines matched up on the side seams. But if you haven't got a walking foot, it's definitely not essential. I just use my standard foot on my machine. So if you got this kit again, you may have found some of this in there. It looks like a piece of paper, but it's actually something called Stretch Fix, and I love this stuff. It's wonderful for hemming your garment. I'm going to pop up a little video showing you how to apply it. Basically, you cut the strip to the size that you need. For mine, it was 1.5 centimeters, so it's the same width as your hem allowance. And then you put the glue side down onto the wrong side of your fabric, iron over the top of it, wait for it to cool for a few seconds, and then peel off the paper backing. You'll see that you've got kind of a shiny surface left on your fabric, and that acts like a glue. So when you fold your hem up, iron it in place, it kind of sticks it in place for you. So you don't need to worry about using lots of pins, which is really handy. Then you just hem as usual. For me, it was a straight stitch with my Mariflex. And what it does is it prevents that hem from going out of place and going wavy. It stabilizes your hem, which is really good, because when it's not stabilized, you can end up with a bit of a wavy hem. This is a fairly good example on this one, which I didn't use Mariflex on. You can see it's just a bit lumpy and bumpy along the hem there, whereas this one is nice and smooth and flat. So it stabilizes your seam and gives you more of a professional finish. When it comes to buttonholes, such as the one on this cardigan, it can be a bit daunting. I wasn't entirely sure how my machine was going to handle this, but actually it worked really well for me. The button band on this cardigan is interfaced, and it's essential when doing buttonholes that your fabric is interfaced to stabilize it. My sewing machine has a one-step buttonhole option on it. I use the standard setting, and what I did do, which I think is incredibly useful, if you have a start-stop function on your machine rather than a foot pedal, use that when you're doing your buttonholes, because basically it feeds it through at a consistent speed and helps to prevent the risk or reduce the risk of your machine stopping and just stitching in the same place. I also keep my hands on the fabric, and if it does look like it's about to stop, just gently, really gently feed it through so that it doesn't get stuck. And that really did work well for me. So have a look and see if you've got that little stop start button. It is a real game changer for buttonholes. If you find your machine still is misbehaving, you might find that in your sewing tools you have one of these. This is a button foot stabilizer plate. This actually came with my machine, and I only started using it about a year ago. I was making a True Bias Marlowe cardigan with a fluffy knitted fabric, and it just wasn't feeding through. So I popped this on. It goes on, it sort of slides into your buttonhole foot, and when you lift your presser foot up, your fabric goes under there and it feeds through much more smoothly and much more evenly. It has something to grip onto. So check your manual, check your toolkit, see if you've got one of these. If not, I think it's worth putting one on your Christmas list, because it's a good little investment and it really helps with thick fabric, knitted fabric, or just anything that you're struggling with. Really, it does really help. Some sewing machines also have a stretch buttonhole option. Mine doesn't, but if you do, it can make a big difference. So again, check your manual, check your setting. If you've got a stretch buttonhole option, then I would recommend you use that, and it should also make it easier for you. If you're still struggling, another thing you can use as a last resort is some wash away stabilizing paper. It's the same things that quilters use. You can pop it on your fabric and it gives your machine something to grip hold of as it's sewing. And then once you pop it in the machine, it should disappear. And last but not least, once you've got your beautiful buttonholes in place, I recommend using a little bit of this, which is Fray Check. There's a few different brands out there. This one's Brynn. It's basically a fabric glue. You pop it on top of your buttonholes before cutting them open, and it helps to prevent fraying and just keeps them nice and neat and tidy. You only need a tiny little drop. So pop it on, give it a minute or two to dry. And then I think ideally what you want to do is you want to be using a chisel to cut through. If you don't have a chisel, use your seam ripper, but do pop a pin at the top of your buttonhole so that you don't go too far and cut. When you're using your seam ripper to go through jersey buttonholes, it is stretchy and it'd be very easy to accidentally cut through your lovely neat work that you've just done, and you really don't want to be doing that right at the last minute. So a bit of fray check, pin at the top, cut your buttonholes open, and then the last thing you need to do is sew on your beautiful buttons, which is very easy. I actually use my machine to do this, but you can hand sew them if you want to. And you're done. So I hope that's been helpful. Jersey isn't as scary as you think it is. Just handle it with care, use the right tools, and you will end up with a beautiful garment.